What is going on, everyone? Online Prep Coach Alex here at theprepcoach.com, back with a seminar. I'm going to start doing these seminars, and I kind of really want the direction of this YouTube channel to be all seminar based. That and vlogs. So basically all content's going to be like 30 plus minutes long. And in these seminars, I really want to take things to the next level and really make sure people are getting not only baseline information education, but also applicable take-home knowledge and things they can do right now to get better, regardless of what it is. So this first seminar is going to be on how to have limitless energy. This is specifically being made for my good friend, Andrew. So when I went out to do the Mark Bell podcast, he's the guy behind the scenes doing all the camera work, all the editing, all the lighting and fun stuff like that. And if you've noticed, Alex got a mic, Alex got some lights, not 100% yet, but we're getting there. And it's all because of Andrew for helping me set this up, and he's gonna help me evolve this as I keep growing and expanding and doing different things. I really want the production quality and value to go up to match the substance of the content I'm talking about. So Andrew, this is for you. Thank you so much. Limitless energy. So for those of you who don't know about me, my background, stuff like that, it's gonna be annoying information for everyone else that does know me. We'll blaze past that really quickly just so everyone knows we're on the same page. I was never a naturally smart person. I was always kind of naturally dumb. It wasn't until 2020 whenever I realized I wasn't really on the best track in life, and I realized that I wanted to do more with my life. I realized that I wanted to get to that next level, be superhuman, and be able to literally do it all. And part of that is having limitless energy. So being a relatively unintelligent individual, wanting to improve in every single aspect of life, I started this whole journey. I didn't really know what I was doing all the time, but things just, made sense from an intuition, gut-based aspect. So I followed it. I followed up with research, I understood some things, and then all of a sudden it came to what it is today, to where I'm helping out a lot of people in every aspect of life, just trying to have a better quality of life in every single way. And having limitless energy, the ability to continue to comprehend, retain, and process information while still having time for your wife and kids, while still having time to train, still having time to sleep, not losing out on any aspect. It takes time. Again, I started this in 2020, so we're coming up on about 5-ish years of doing this. It is a long journey and a long road. Everything we're gonna talk about today is going to be slow, meaning we're gonna talk about everything, the majority of everything. Don't do it all today. Make one habitual change per day, per week, per month, per year. Doesn't matter. It's gonna slowly improve where you're gonna be at over time. Because with all of this fun stuff, it does not matter how hard you go right out of the gate. What actually matters is how consistent you actually are with everything. I have my water ready because I plan on talking for a while. So we're gonna get right into this. How to have limitless energy. So first, when we were looking at the most basic aspect, and certain things, by the way, might be a little tinfoil hat-ish for certain people, other people might not. We're gonna literally touch on absolutely everything because it's all an amalgamation of being able to have it all and do it all. If you wanna be able to have it all and do it all, that kind of means you also have to do it all. So it's gonna make sense. So first of all, we're looking at daily habits. This is probably one of the best things, one of the most important things, right? Because these are the things that we are doing every single day that really do add up over time. So if we look at our daily habits, we have a couple different things. First of all, I really want to look at our overall energetics. Energetics being the energy systems we're using every single day that we should be maximizing. Does not mean you have to do all this every single day again, but slowly over time, you should be proficient at every energetic system because, again, it's gonna make sense in a second. If we look at our energetics, we have a couple different things, right? We have, actually, I'll just do one of those. We have the energetic spectrum that gets utilized whenever we are actually weight training, right? So we have our actual resistance work. We have the parasympathetic beta oxidative orbital things that we're utilizing whenever we're at rest. We have our prolastic, so our low intensity cardio-based states. And we then have our high intensity interval training, the far end spectrum glycolysis, and then we also have our basic non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So I define these as different energetic systems because if you look at them, they all have different goals, right? So everyone out there should be doing all of these 5 systems at some point in their week or month or year. Doesn't mean you're gonna do everything every day, but we're trying to improve not only how our brain utilizes substrate in blood, how our body utilizes substrate, nutrient partitioning, full body, neurological insulin sensitivity. It all bleeds over and spills over to also manage inflammation oxidation, to make sure that our body's focused on repairing and growing processes and hypertrophying processes, whether it be neural tissue, myological tissue, whatever, cartilage, things like that, versus just stuck in this massive inflammatory cycle that a lot of people are stuck in these days. So because of that, our weight training, if we're looking at weight training, you could be a powerlifter, a strongman, a bodybuilder, a recreational, any kind of athlete out there, your main resistance work, even if you're in the endurance world like cycling, that needs to be myological muscular failure. So actually looking at mechanical tension factors in some variety, right? So our weight training is mainly gonna be more of our myological stressor. So in this world, we have lean contractile tissue failing first. We then have the parasympathetic beta oxidative world. This is whenever we are taking our walks outside, right? So it's very low heart rate, low arousal, low ventilation, and very parasympathetic. Whenever we're not training or exercising, this is the system that our body is utilizing to fuel what we're doing at that moment. So for 20 hours out of the day, how are we getting our fuel? That's coming from this PBO, that parasympathetic beta oxidative system. It's not gonna be found in the literature, by the way. I made that term up. Actually, me and one of my friends made that up a couple years ago. But I make up a lot of things, but that's just because it's not clearly defined in the research. So I'm the idiot looking, because I make my own things up. But it's very real. So we need to get very good at being metabolically flexible and utilizing nutrients properly. What that means is if we get very good at parasympathetic beta oxidation, if you start going hypoglycemic because of lack of glucose in your bloodstream, what can you do? You start pulling from stored body fat. You start pulling from adipocytes. You start fueling your body with free fatty acids. Then you go through the whole liver, BHB, ketone aspect. It's one of the most important systems to understand, and it's a very underrated system. So PBO-wise, this is where we're mainly looking at the ability to increase, we're gonna say, nutrient utilization, mainly during those rest periods. Then from there, we're going to our prolastic cardio. So this is our list, our low intensity steady state cardio. I call it prolastic because I'm looking at utilizing this for the main reason of improving the elastic portion of our atria. So whenever blood is coming into the heart, it can either hit against a stiff wall and cause cardiac fibrosis, damage, Purkinje fiber damage, like different septal-based changes over time, which causes cardiac hypertrophy and things like that, or it can go with it. So would you rather have your blood hit a stiff cardiac wall, or would you rather have your blood hit a very elastic wall? So prolastic. That's why we're doing our low intensity cardio. This is mainly for the cardiac side of things. And again, I think that's just important to understand, because if we have a poor cardiac, renal, or hepatic system, the neurological system is not going to work efficiently. Alzheimer's, for example, that accumulation of some plaques is mainly coming from a downstream organ-based dysfunction, usually renal or hepatic-wise, but it can also come from cardiac dysfunction. So it's actually a protective mechanism, but we're seeing that coming from a downstream problem. So this gets screwed up by what's going on down here. So because of that, cardiac system needs to be in place. Then we have our HIIT, our high intensity far end spectrum glycolysis. This is where we want lung-based failure. So this is where we are really trying to just blow out our oxygen. So we're gonna say lung failure. So with the resistance world, we were looking at myological failure in some variety or fashion. And in the high intensity world, we're looking at lung-based failure, oxygen-based failure at some variety or fashion. What this does is super cool. At that level, because if you look at the standard American, we'll say obese, doesn't track their nutrition, doesn't exercise or anything, they walk up the steps, right? They get out of breath. You hear them pant and just going up the steps. That's literally what proton and electron leak and slip looks like. So those subatomic particles aren't being handled properly. They spin off, go off and cause oxidative damage. We don't want that, because that just puts stressors on every single system in our body. So because of that, we are looking at making sure we are managing our ability to handle oxygen, which manages our subatomic particles, which then improves how we utilize every nutrient, every supplement, and every bit of pharmacology coming into our body. So literally by doing our far end spectrum glycolysis, I do this with my top IFBB pros to improve the supplementation they're taking. I do this with cardiac failure patients, assuming we've already healed the cardiac tissue, taking care of the problems. You can't stress out that tissue right away. What it's called is the actual preconditioning effect. So if you can get that cardiac tissue close to having an actual trauma, it can go ahead and it will adapt better. And the next time there is an actual cardiac myopathy or some kind of cardiac damage-based event, it will be less efficient at causing damage because it's preconditioned to that. So tons of things can go into there, but that's roughly what we're looking at with our hit. Then our knee. This is literally as basic as it is. Movement, right? We need to walk. We need to move around the earth. We need to just get up and do things. Now, if we're looking at NEAT in this sense, although tracking NEAT for certain individuals can be amazing, it's not a replacement. Just because you're doing a high amount of NEAT does not mean you're managing oxygen failure, managing those cardiac cascades, managing those nutrient partitioning changes, or managing those myological changes. And you kind of can't avoid NEAT, so it's kind of built into the system of just being a creature, being alive. But as a general rule of thumb, starting off first, if we're looking at having limitless energy, we have to improve how our body utilizes nutrients, oxygen, and subatomic particles. It all starts literally with our baseline energetics. So if you look at any high-ranking CEO, anyone who's trying to be efficient in every single way in life, in some variety or style, they have some form of exercise in. To me, this is the best way to go about doing that. But again, you don't need to do these every single day. You don't need to be doing 2-a-day sessions. This could literally be as simple as 2 weight training sessions weekly, 1 HIIT training session weekly, walks daily. And 1 or 2 prolastic list sessions in there, and then you're kind of just monitoring NEAT. Again, it can be as low or as high as you personally need, but making sure that you're improving your energetics on every spectrum, I think is extremely important. So that's the first thing we're going with. Now what we're gonna actually do is we are looking at, we're gonna go to sun, okay? So sun, and we're going to go with light exposures as a whole. So when we go out in nature, there is a massive change that goes on. We have, first of all, the environment. So we have that sun, that photonic exchange, different wavelengths. If you go out in the morning, first 2 hours later, 6 hours later, 10 hours later, before bed, the moon, there's all different wavelengths and photonic exchanges that's going through our suprachiasmatic nucleus, modulating all of those cool circadian-based cascades to really tell our body what to do. So a very simple way, if you have trouble getting up in the morning, get outside. If you have trouble calming down at night, go outside and let your eyes actually be hit by the moonlight. This starts to trigger depending on, like if you're in the AM, it's triggering a lot of those androgen-based cascades, whereas over in the PM, it's more of that nocturnal-based sleep melatonins, growth hormones, somatropic side of things, tons of other things going on. But baseline, that exposure of the wavelengths is massively important. So number one, we have that basic exposure, okay? So we're gonna say actual exposure to sun. Again, that could literally be as simple as 5 or 10 minutes morning, 5 or 10 minutes at night. You don't even have to be crazy, stripped down. You could literally have your clothes on. There's so many different ways you can do this depending on what you're looking to do. What you can also look at with the sun exposure world is what it's doing when it traverses the skin. So remember, the wavelengths from the sun are traversing skin, bone, mitochondria. It's doing everything internally. So going outside in and of itself does a cool job of uncoupling androgen receptors. So we see that androgen improvement aspect for natural enhanced. It's improving the way our body utilizes androgens naturally by improving the way they bind and the way they actually untether from the receptor. So the way, and this is not really how it looks, but in my head, this is how it kind of looks. We basically have androgen receptor. We have receptor geometry coming on. This is the ligand. So let's say that is a testosterone molecule. That testosterone molecule is going to float around. It's actually be going through the cytosol. It's going to be pulled via SHBG into the nuclei, all that kind of fun stuff after it binds, forms a dimer, all that kind of cool stuff. Before that, though, we're having the ligand actually bind to our androgen receptor, and then that's going to go ahead and literally tether. So it's not going to actually, it's not the lock and key analogy. It's nothing like that. It's going to make a conformational change. And it's all more magnetism based. And this is where later on we'll get into the conversation of electrochemical and electromagnetic gradients, spin, frequencies, vibrations, things like that. But we're having this actually tether. Again, we're actually going to form a dimer, and then eventually pulled in, go off to its fun stuff with the nuclei, gene expression. There is that initial non-genomic action that occurs whenever binding happens, and then there's the genomic expression that happens epigenetically afterwards. But essentially what we're looking at here is when you have sun exposure, it's improving ligand binding, sending its chemical signal, and then untethering and going to find another receptor to send another chemical signal after it actually binds. So binding affinity, how likely it is to find receptor, binding constant, essentially how hard it binds, and so on and so forth. So sunlight, overall, just exposure improves androgen receptor function, which, again, we're talking about having limitless energy. This is not just for the athlete out there. If you want to be healthy in any way, like we're going to talk about, you need to make sure that your androgen sex hormone axis is balanced. Any female out there who has low estrogen, low progesterone, you know how terrible life is. It gets terrible, you have no energy. Any male out there that has tanked estradiol, that has tanked testosterone, same thing. So this is not just for the athletes, this is literally for absolutely everyone. So we have sunlight doing that. Our exposure, our androgen receptor functioning, there are so many different positive dermal changes. There are so many different positive circadian changes. We're going to look at our circadian world like we talked about beforehand with releasing the right AM versus PM ligands. Remember, ligands are just hormones that bind. We're looking at positive dermal-based changes. We are looking at different times of the day, different spectrum of light actually driving up our own endogenous stem cell release. So what we actually have is, it's called, there's essentially a receptor and a ligand-mediated process, and what we're doing is we're causing dissociation from bone marrow. So red bone marrow is what's producing these stem cells. We're disassociating them, and then we're pumping them out into the bloodstream. So we do have a cool stem cell conversation. Now, in the same breath, we're gonna say, okay, we know it's good to be outside. Everyone knows that. We have to get our sun exposure. Best case scenario, you're gonna be outside all day. That's not always reality. Certain people can do that, and that's awesome for them. If you can't do it, literally, the more the better. If you can only be outside for 5 minutes a day, that's better than none. If you can be outside for 10 minutes a day, that's better than none. Everything exists on a spectrum, and what's absolutely optimal on paper doesn't always fit your lifestyle. So we know that, so we're just gonna say, okay, as much as you can, as long as you're not losing out on other parts of life. So now we're gonna have the different light spectrums. This is where I feel like there's a lot of hate towards blue light, kind of rightfully so. With all of the technology in our society today, what it's essentially doing is reprogramming our neural networking in multiple different ways, modulating our dopaminergic response, further modulating all neural networks, therefore then changing all the downstream aspects of that. So just from excessive blue light exposure, we are seeing different changes with atherosclerosis, so actual buildup of plaque in arteries. We are seeing some different infertility-based cascades that I believe is modulated by sodium, potassium, ATPase pumps within sperm cells. We see different changes with actual oocyte development over in the female fertility world. So that oocyte maturation, oogonium, all that kind of fun stuff, we're starting to see that being downregulated. We start seeing all these other plaque-related problems and oxidative problems build up. So blue light is not bad. Blue light overexposure is bad. And in today's society, everyone's pretty much has blue light overexposure. But there's a time and a place for everything, right? So let's kind of look at the positives. Let's spin this around a little bit. If we look at our actual blue lights, we have our greens, we have our reds, we have our near infrareds. We're not going to get into the spectrums of nanometers because that is going to be a video in and of itself. I'll make that seminar later on in light specifically. This is an overall broad picture of everything. So in the blue world, you can actually use that to do a good job of down-regulating topical acne production. So you can actually have little blue light spectrums. Most people, I don't think, need them, but it'll actually alter bacterial changes on topical surfaces. So you can buy some cool little devices for localized issues, things like that. We may not need that, but it's still a pretty cool change to actually have. We have some of the green light therapies. If it's actually used after red light therapy, it can drive localized stem cell release. If it is used before red light therapy or by itself, it could potentially blunt stem cell release. But even cooler than that is it does a good job of actually improving, we're going to say, many depressive states. So it can alter neurochemistry in a way to modulate. So it's not so much, high dopamine, low serotonin, or vice versa. It's what's going on in your neurochemistry. So if you personally have too high serotonin, too low dopamine in the prefrontal cortex, or maybe there's a different problem with like a GABA glutamate-based issue, it's going to auto-regulate that based on what you need. So it's not like a straight dopaminergic or serotonergic therapy. It's modulating it based off of what your neurochemistry needs at the time. So green light therapy can have some cool things in the neurochemical world. Red light therapy is really cool. Again, does multiple things. I kind of really see it as that overall myological player. So if you have a muscular tear, if you have a muscular injury, things like that, the myological muscular based level, I really like how it will traverse the skin and go and alter the mitochondria in that area. Whereas near infrared, and there's multiple spillovers over here, by the way, near infrared, I kind of see it more so as the stem cell and even further mitochondrial player, because we're looking at how far it's penetrating into the skin, no matter what, it's touching, tickling, playing with mitochondria the entire way. So there's a lot of spillover here, but normally we can kind of see it as being topical and then deeper, 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 deeper. And there are multiple benefits to localized therapy, to global therapy. If you're someone who's utilizing these light therapies and you are always getting sick, something like that, we're trying to put that at the base of our skull. So that's where we're really looking at the actual lizard portion of our brain, brainstem, all that kind of fun stuff. You can also do it when you're doing your neuroplastic work, which we're going to talk about later on. That's going to drive up your overall hemodynamic flow to the brain, which is cool. We like that. More blood in the brain means more improved cerebral metabolic rate, which improves neurological insulin sensitivity. Literally all cool things, right? So either way, bunch of different ways you can do that. Normally what I like to do is if we're having our sun exposure covered, then what we're going to do is we're going to follow that up with one of these light spectrums that we need more of. For me personally, what I'm a big fan of is actually training in red and near infrared light therapies. What it's doing is it's modulating those mitochondrial ATPases, it's modulating the spin, and it's giving us a little more ATP production. It's also taking adipocytes, so fat cells, it's weakening the layer around it. It's weakening the cell walls. It'll dump more of those free fatty acids, triglycerides, into the bloodstream, so you're technically having easier ability to stay leaner longer, which is really, really cool. So we have a lot of the light stuff. We have a lot of the sun exposure, the outdoor stuff. I think next we're going to go ahead and look at our neuroplastic work. So in this world, we're going to go with in our neuroplastic world, we had a lot of things going on here. We'll get to supplementation, we'll get to all that fun stuff later on, but right now we are looking at baseline neurology, neurochemistry. I like doing something, then taking something, versus just taking something, not doing anything. It would be like if you just took creatine monohydrate or testosterone therapies without actually going to the gym and training. For an athlete, for other reasons, there's plenty of reasons to use those therapies for health-based purposes, but you can also get more action out of those if you're actually going out and doing something with those ligands and hormones and changing the whole metabolism of them in and of itself. So in the neuroplastic world, I have daily neuroplastic games that I've done every single day of my life, well, almost every single day, since 2020, along with having all of my clients do these as well. Because if you can imagine all the work we do in the gym, all the work we do with all this fun stuff, what are we missing? Most people aren't even reading books these days. They're mostly scrolling through Instagram. So we're trying to improve how our neurological tissue hypertrophies and changes. Remember, everything's plastic in our body. It can all be changed. We can hypertrophy neurons, we can lose and atrophy neurons in neural tissue. So we are trying to hypertrophy our brain and push things in the right direction. So number one, we are going to start off with a word with a high amount of syllables. So we have our actual word with a high amount of syllables. Then from there, we are going to go into actual cursive writing. Then we're going to go ahead, we're going to have our actual neuroplastic games. Then from there, we're going to go ahead and learn a new language. After that, we're going to go ahead, learn a new vocabulary word. Then we can potentially throughout the day do different things like different mnemonic devices. We can use our non-dominant hand. And then we're going to talk about actual mastic, gum, and chewing. Remember, Already, this is a lot. You're not expected to do everything every single day. You're supposed to take notes and slowly change your habits over time. So, neuroplastic-wise, lots of stuff going on here, okay? We are first taking a word with a high amount of syllables. This could be N-phenylacetylprolyglycine ethyl ester. This could be L-alpha-glycerolphosphocholene. This could be glucose 6-phosphate. This could, you literally pick a word with a long amount of syllables. You're going to slowly say it faster and faster. N-phenylacetylprolyglycine ethyl ester, N-phenylacetylprolyglycine ethyl ester, so on and so forth. What this is doing is, and again, all these are doing multiple things. Everything we're talking about up here, this is an overall broad overview. Everything has quaternary, secondary, tertiary, or rather primary, oh, there we go, primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary aspects. So it's doing the main thing, the second most important thing, third and fourth most important thing. So we're looking mainly at the primary reasons why we're utilizing these. So word-wise, doing the high amount of syllables is doing a good job of trying to go ahead and improve overall comprehension, right? So as we're improving that comprehension, you're repeating that word about 10 to 20, 30 times, depending on the speed and how you're actually progressing. If you start screwing up and slurring your words, stop. We don't want that. We then go into the cursive. The cursive is connecting both hemispheres of the brain. That's going to improve the processing speed of the information that we are now comprehending. After that, I will always give the biggest shout outs in the world to the Elevate app. No discount code, they're just awesome. I think it's like $30 for the year, something like that. You go on, play the 5 daily neurological games. To me, these are, and I always call them the neurological reps for the day. They have multiple different benefits. I'm pausing for that because there's certain games that are so hard, and if you fail, you have to repeat them. They can test your temper. Part of having limitless energy is not letting stressors get to you. So indirectly, by doing your neurological reps for the day, yes, you're practicing your math skills, your linguistics, your vocabulary, all of that's helping, but the simple fact that you have to focus. Remember, everything we do is habitual. If you are slowly getting better at focusing, slowly getting better at building the habit of not losing your temper, that's a habit. We're establishing and building new habits. So indirectly, by playing these neurological games, anyone who's out there who works with me is a client of mine, they know some days you're just not firing neurochemically, you didn't have good sleep, you fought with your wife, whatever. Those are the days that are hard. And if you fail one time, you're like, okay, I'll do it again. Then you start trying to speed it up. Life's on your own schedule. Slow it down. We'll get to the mantras later on. But we have our neurological reps for the day. Then we're looking at learning a new language. Overall, that's really going to improve our ability to communicate. Why that's important is because if we have all this comprehension of information that we can then process faster, that we can remember easier, then we need to be able to actually convey that, whether it be in a video or if you're presenting at a meeting for work or if you're just even thinking of typing in an email, it's all very intercommunicated or rather interconnected. So now from the vocabulary aspect, this also does a good job of increasing processing speed, modulates some cool hemisphere-based changes. With the language as well, that's also going to be white matter, gray matter, so processing repair dependent. We're kind of seeing the vocabulary, again, I'll change this based on the day I'm talking about it. Increasing that vocabulary increases your overall ability to understand, which then potentiates everything else up here. So we're going to say that that potentiates all of these other players. So we have that overall potentiation. Does some other things. We're going to leave it there as the primary reason. We then have our mnemonic devices. One of the things called chunking. So if you're trying to improve your memory, you can do some of these actual mnemonic devices. So I always tell people, you go to the grocery store. You need apples, bananas, and carrots. Think about A, B, C. Picture it in your mind. Picture the A and the B and the C, and then picture the words written next to them. Burn that image into your head. Put it in the left upper corner of your brain. Remember it, A, B, C, and you can remember apples, bananas, carrots. We're trying to give you a photographic memory. I have had a terrible memory my whole life. I don't have a photographic memory now, but I'm pretty dang close because of drills like this every day. You're doing this, so you're doing these first thing in the morning. Those are done sometime in the morning to really start off your day and kick off neurochemistry in the right direction. Then the mnemonic devices for the memory, that's done slowly throughout the day. The non-dominant hand does a cool job of actually driving up the creation of new neural networks. So very important. If we are learning so much information, learning new skills, doing new tasks, things like that, what's going to happen is you're going to end up basically having roadblocks in your neurochemical journey. So what we want to do is try and create all these new neural networks. You're then also going to have to learn something new and novel, which we'll put down here. What ends up happening is every day our brain goes through a process of basically synaptic pruning, neuronal pruning, whatever you want to call it. If you are not learning something new and novel, then your brain consumes so much oxygen, so much energy. It's not trying to hypertrophy. It's not trying to grow. If we don't learn something new, drive that glial side of things, then we're not going to retain anything we're doing up here and anything else we're doing in our daily life. So you want to do something new and novel to really blunt that actual pruning process and to keep everything we're doing. Juggling, rapping, jump rope, sign language, learning Elvish, I don't know, whatever. It doesn't matter, just has to be new and novel. Make sure it's nothing even close to your world. So in my world with biology, pharmacology, whatever, I try and learn things that I'll go learn about birds. Actually, no, I actually got into that field as of recently, but I would go into things like the jugglings and like the other things like that. Bad example on the birds, but you get what I'm saying. The mastic gum, this is a cool one. So the actual modulation of your masseter muscles in your actual chewing, actually hard gum goes ahead and drives up not only cerebral blood flow, but also stem cell release from neuronal centers. So if we are trying to, that's supposed to be an up. If we were trying to improve our neurological tissue recovery-wise, increased neural stem cell release is massive. So the way I pair this is during my days when I'm doing my walks outside, I will get a piece of mastic gum. I will listen to a podcast. If my wife's not walking with me, if she's walking with me, we talk and we have that engagement, which is cool. But if we're not doing that, I still have the mastic gum in play. If we are just walking together, then I'm getting more neuronal recovery. If we are walking and listening to the podcast, I'm learning faster because you have that immediate blood flow to the brain, immediate change to cerebral insulin sensitivity, and therefore the immediate changes on the recovery stem cell-based aspects. You can encode things better, store things better, pull things better. So we have our energetics, we have our actual sunlight, we have our neuroplastic work. Now we're going to go ahead, I need another drink of water. And now I think we're going to get into the overall, we're going to get into some of the other things that are generally overlooked. And this is where we're really going to look at the water side of things, literally this, and the quantum side of things, also this. And then I think we're going to have to erase this so I can have more space. So we're going to do water, and then we're going to do quantum. So these are ones that I'm going to have full future seminars breaking down. A lot of these I'm going to have full future seminars breaking down, but I feel like it has to be included in here. In the water-based world, there are so many different ways you can go. You can go with reverse osmosis, which basically gets rid of everything good and bad. You can go with deuterium depleted, pulling out deuterium, because deuterium is the thing that, look at those ATPases that'll get stuck in there and then it throws off the spin of those mitochondria. You can look at the different alkaline waters. There's so many different things out there and they all have benefit and merit. If you can't tell already, I'm a big fan of everything. Everything has its place and purpose. Even good old crappy water, tap water that hasn't been filtered or anything, it's still water, it's still good. A lot of this work, I have to give a massive shout out and all the credit in the world to Jonathan Butts and Todd Shipman. This is where we're looking at the structured, revitalized water. To me, that's where I think I put all of my eggs in that basket. I think that makes the most sense on paper to me, but at the same time, if you are having deuterium depleted water, that's going to be beneficial. If you're having different pH modulated waters, that's going to be beneficial. All of the water therapies out there, reverse osmosis, it's all beneficial. You can ozonate water. You just go down the list. These all have different benefits. So there isn't really a worse or better one in my opinion. I think it's more how you view water. So in this world of the Jonathan Butts of the world, we are looking at water as being literally a living, breathing, communicating system. What we're looking at here, and the cool thing with their technologies over at Natural Action, is that they have vortex-based technologies, so we are getting the structuring of the water going. So instead of just having, H2O, right? What ends up happening is whenever we're having water push through all these pipes, that heavy pressurization, it starts to slowly damage the water over time. So now all of a sudden, those hydrogens are kind of only playing and helping the hydrogens. Those oxygens are kind of only playing and helping the oxygens versus working in sync. So their technologies, they have different vortex technologies, they have different magnetism-based changes. You can manipulate water and restructure it to be like it was found in nature. So imagine it falling down from a waterfall, going over the rocks, going downstream, picking up all the minerals. So many cool things. To me, I really look at water as being more so of that living-based structure that communicates and can literally be the basis of overall cellular communication and pretty much everything. That's where RNA comes from, you know? So to me, I would be looking more at the structured, revitalized water. You can get a ton of different units from Natural Action. Again, it could be something as simple as they have a faucet attachment. They have one for your whole house. Awesome things for your pool. Like, it's an amazing product, and I feel like you have to go down the rabbit hole. But also take a look at all the different deuterium-based ones. So if we look at the deuterium-depleted side of things, if you are on the side of the living water, the structured water, the water that's been revitalized, then you kind of think, oh, okay, that water has to live its full life cycle, and the deuterium itself is part of that life cycle. So if you're kind of in that camp, then you don't deplete deuterium. If you're in the deuterium camp, then you go, but that deuterium in that state is going to cause a lot of oxidative stress, load, and inflammation downstream, modulate the mitochondrial interaction, so we want to get rid of deuterium. Again, to me, it's which camp do you fall into. Then the ozonated waters and things like that. But there are a ton of things to go into. But I think as a general, because if we're looking to have limitless energy, our basic source of existence, communication at a cellular level is water. So in some way, again, not that tap water is that bad. It can have some bad particulates in there, but most systems are being filtered and processed, and it may be coming to you in a dead, less effective state, but it's still water. We still need it. If you're in this world of having limitless energy, trying to do it all, have it all, these are the little things that I think matters. So I would look in some way into the water spectrum side of things. Look at the science of ozonated water, deuterium depleted water, and structured revitalized water. Go with that camp, because to me, I think they're all beneficial. Now we have the quantum energetic side of things. In the quantum world, we are looking at things below the subatomic particle level. So if this is below that level, what does that really have to do with? If we're looking at that quantum energetic side of things, it's literally as simple as talking about it as our spin. Everything is energetic, frequency, and vibrationally based. So how are atoms moving in the first place? No one really asked that question. How are mitochondrial ATPases spinning? No one really asked that question. We're really looking at the quantum energetic side of things here, modulating the spin of everything upstream. So if you can better modulate the spin of, like actually right here, what I'm drinking out of is from Lila Quantum. This is one of their actual quantum charged waters. And what we're looking to do is, if you are quantum charging water, for example, we are modulating the spin of those atomic particles. So if there's a pathogen, bacteria, if it was heavily pressurized like we just talked about in the water-based world, the spin's going to be off. If you have a cluster of cancerous cells, spin's going to be off versus comparing that to some healthy cells. The spin's going to be off. So we're looking at things below the subatomic particle level. At this level, we can change multiple things with a couple of their actual, I'm pointing because I have a little block over there from Lila Quantum. If we would want to modulate the hematology side of things. So if you have red blood cells, what can happen, I just did this for one of my athletes in Daytona. We actually did some quantum charging work before the race day because we wanted to make sure we had usable free oxygen from hemoglobin. So what you can actually have is you can have, not phallic, you can have red blood cells that will essentially cluster together in trying to pull electrons and all that kind of fun stuff. We can actually bring in that quantum world to modulate the spin to then get disassociation to then now, that's supposed to be individual. Before they were bound, now they're individual. Now these individual blood cells can now operate properly, carry and modulate more hemoglobin, modulate more oxygen, give you more ability to drive endurance up to that next level, modulate cellular pH changes, all that kind of cool stuff. The quantum world is awesome. Look at Lila Quantum. They have the little heal capsules if you're trying to modulate EMF frequencies. They have the different blocks. There's tons of different things. I'm looking over there because I literally have, I guess I'll just show you guys. This is their actual travel block. So super little thing. This is obviously what I take whenever I travel. And it can have just a massive amount of benefits. So that might be some of the tinfoil hat stuff that maybe people don't want to get into. More than fine. We're trying to cover everything. If you're trying to be and have limitless energy and be the best you possibly can in some way, you need to manage energetics, manage your sun exposure, your light exposure. You have to manage your neuroplastic side of things, and you have to manage the water you're drinking. And if you want to get to that next level, it's that quantum energetic side of things. So we're going to erase all this. And I think I'm going to need a better, this eraser is okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at lab work. In the lab work side of things, this is where people with poor hormones or maybe poor immune systems will just get bogged down and tanked. And then it doesn't matter what else you're doing, because if you are not healthy hormonally, you can be fixing all these things downstream. But then if you have these upstream problems, then it doesn't really matter. So that is good enough. So now, labs. There's a lot we can get. We're going to try and stick with the basics, right? So, and we're going to break everything down, make sure it all makes sense. We're going to look at our basic comprehensive metabolic panel, our hematology-based panel. We want to look at our thyroid markers. We want to look at our sex hormones. We want to look at our glucose metabolism. So there can be a couple things there. We may want to check our renal side of things. So that's going to be a cystatin C. And we're going to look at overall inflammation. Again, with lab work, this can literally go on and on and on. We're trying to keep this as brief and basic as possible so that you can have some real applicable information. So, comprehensive metabolic panel, the basic of what's going on. We're looking at our AST, ALT, our ALK phos. We're looking at what's going on with our overall immune system. This is kind of like our basic panel, just the overall what's going on in our body. So CMP-wise, that is our overall. Basically, are you trending better or trending worse, right? Then from there, we're looking at our CBC panel. Now, CBC-wise, this is where we have our overall hematology. So whenever I say, because again, I use words differently than everyone else, when we're looking at hematology, this is wherever we are really looking at our red blood cell counts. We're looking at our hematocrit, our hemoglobin. We're looking at the different morphological structures. If you're an enhanced athlete taking TRT, HRT or more, or Gen Pop who's on HRT, your morphological structures of red blood cells are going to change because of how your androgenic system is modulating male or female. So those morphological numbers are going to be different, the RDWs and things like that. If you are natural, usually the morphological changes aren't going to be there because we're not having the same kind of sex hormone-based metabolism. So you have to understand that. But first of all, if we're looking at these basics, for limitless energy, for eternal energy, whatever we want to call it, that CMP panel is just going to be basic, okay? So you get it just to make sure there's nothing big that's really kind of sticking out in the forefront saying, hey, this is why you feel so bad. But the CBC panel to me is almost a little bit more important. This is where we can have people, so in the gut, we have a macronutrient equation, we have an iron equation, we have all these different cofactors that give you new red blood cells that are functional. If you're anemic, what's the first thing going to happen? Besides craving ice chips, you are just going to have no energy. You're not going to be able to carry enough oxygen hemoglobin-wise around the body. So the hematology panel is extremely important to look at. If we are seeing, okay, we're lethargic throughout the day, maybe you're not even craving ice chips, maybe you get that back and maybe red blood cell count is low. Maybe hemoglobin is low, maybe hematocrit is low. That's where we're going to look at our thyroid because there's a thyroid hormone connection in the gut with gut hormone-based metabolism that then alters how our body utilizes iron and all that kind of fun stuff to then give us a proper hematology panel. So in the hematology-wise, we're looking at those overall numbers. If we're anemic, low iron, whatever, okay, that's a big problem. Also check your thyroid. In the thyroid world, we're looking at a couple different things. So this is, again, going to depend very much on the person, on the problem, if they're natural, enhanced, HRT, whatever. Basic T4. So T4 is cool because it modulates these underlying things called iodinase enzymes. So thyroid hormone up here, so if we have our actual big daddy thyroid hormones up here, like T3 for example, it's not going to be able to work on localized muscle architecture without the underlying deodenase enzymes. So those deodenase enzymes potentiate all the thyroid hormones up here to actually work efficiently, to then actually go to the actual site of action and do action. What this means is if you're having trouble losing body fat from your glutes, female for example, and you just have either a poor thyroid panel or T3 monotherapy in, it could be because there's a poor enzymatic system underlying that's not allowing that T3 to act locally at your glutes. So natural or enhanced HRT, the thyroid panel matters so much. T4 in particular manages those deodenase enzymes. Super important. T3 is kind of like the localized active metabolic player. That's the one that can be, essentially it can literally waste calories. So if that number isn't up on par, then you're going to have some downregulations in neurological tissue, which then also causes that overall reduced output neural energy, which downregulates cerebral metabolic insulin sensitivity, does a whole lot of bad things. So T4, T3, I like checking the totals. We are looking at total numbers in circulation versus free. And we're going to get to that with sex hormones in a second though, because if we are in this environment, we are energetically efficient and we are utilizing everything as a whole, we are looking at not just what's in the blood, but where it's going and the action it's having. Our lab work isn't sophisticated enough to tell us that. So it's actually just like checking your blood glucose levels or your exogenous ketone levels millimole wise. That's saying what's in the blood. That's not saying what T3 is in your bicep. That's not saying what T4 is doing action in your glutes or in your cerebellum or like whatever basic area we're talking about here. So to me, I like checking for T3, T4 total. And then from there, we're correlating that with overall biomarkers and looking at TSH. So TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, basically telling you how hard your gland's working. So ideally, your TSH is going to be sub 2.0. If you're like 2.0 right around there, you're going to be in an amazing place. Your gland's not having to work too hard. Once you creep up to the 3s, 4s, 5s, certain people are very dysfunctional. I've seen 80s, 90s, 100s. That thyroid gland is just being overworked, being crushed. And that's also going to pull down your energy, which is not going to allow you to therefore have limitless energy. So then we look at reverse T3, which can literally occupy those receptors and then not allow the other thyroid hormones to bind and do their action. It does a lot more than that. It's not so much a dummy player which just sits there and doesn't allow any other action. There are other things. Ideally, though, we want that sub 8. Sub 8 is really where we want to be for reverse T3. I believe the reference range numbers are, it's like 12 plus, something like that. The doctors are okay with. I'm obviously not a doctor, but when you see enough blood work over time, you understand what reverse T3 does. We tend to want to have that lower. For almost everyone, lower is going to be better to allow our thyroid gland to work better, to then allow our active thyroid to work better, to then allow our T4 to modulate deodenase enzymes better. So overall reverse T3 wise, we're looking for sub 8. Now, sex hormones. This is where males, we'll kind of divide this. Big ones for guys. We're going to do test, estradiol, DHT. Females, we're going to do test, estradiol, and progesterone. Now, again, we can have even more tests for females. Estradiol is one. That's one estrogen. There's estriol, there's estrione, there's the 16-hydroxys, there's all these downstream metabolites of estrogen. Generally, if there is not a problem, you don't need to go ahead and get a full Dutch panel, but at some point in your life as a female, get a Dutch panel whenever you're good, whenever you feel good, just so you know what's going on from a ratio-based aspect. So at some point as a female, you're going to want to get a Dutch panel, just see what's going on. Testosterone-wise, same kind of thing. I don't like measuring free testosterone. I like total testosterone because we're not sure, and this is where SHBG comes into the equation. SHBG is a capture and release, meaning it is capturing your ligand. It's not destroying that testosterone. It's pulling it through the action nuclei, it's potentiating those androgen receptor cascades to drive that nuclear interaction to literally deliver it into the cell. So SHBG and free numbers don't really matter too much because if it's free, unbound in the blood, that's not telling you the testosterone is getting in to the actual nuclei. That's driving the actual genomic changes. So to me, male and female, I like total testosterone. Estradiol, that's going to be the big daddy one for a lot of glycogen stored processes, which we need. We need to have a good amount of glycogen storage if we're going to be trying to have limitless energy. It's going to help with overall neurological cascades. It's going to improve overall lipid panels, joint health, libido, sex drive. sex drive and libido in males and females is one of the most important little biomarkers to understand if things are progressing the way that they should be or not. Libido is a good way to say, okay, biologically, are we recovering? Are we good? Or is there some kind of a stressor? If you're getting poor sleep, libido tends to suffer. If you are getting overly stressed, libido tends to suffer. If you are extremely low body fat, libido tends to suffer. So in this whole compilation of talking about limitless energy, libido is a very good indicator, and that's why we also want to check our estradiol. We also then look at DHT for males. So DHT can modulate all dopaminergic neurotransmission, dopamine receptor actions in the brain in males. Again, that's also going to be the thing that can drive a good amount of protein translation transcription, so actually building muscle tissue and things like that. It can also drive a high amount of overall volition and focus. It does a lot of cool things, so we kind of want to keep an eye on that, see what's going on with that. For females, going over to here, same thing with testosterone, same thing with estradiol, but more than likely for females, yeah, we're going to go ahead, we're going to get that Dutch panel to really know what's going on. And then we're also going to check our progesterone. Might want to check prolactin. So females, if there's a prolactin-based problem, that's more nipple-based sensitivity. If there's more of a breast-based problem, that's going to be more of a progesterone-based issue. If there's usually pre-intimacy, there's that white cream that comes from your vaginal tissue. That's going to be more of an estrogen-based change. A lot of these cool different biofeedback markers to see if something is higher or lower. But as a general rule of thumb for the sex hormones, we're keeping it basic. And as long as things aren't crazy out of whack, we're good. I'm saying that, and we're not getting crazy in depth into that, because what we're trying to do is find the trends. We don't care about reference ranges, we care about how you feel. And then we have to correlate that with the reference ranges. So we are looking at effects as being the primary driver over reference ranges. Reference ranges are numbers that came from children and the elderly, sick, healthy, not athletes, not people trying to be superhuman, not people who are trying to have limitless energy. So although reference ranges matter, you have to create your own reference range. So as a general rule of thumb, if you're watching this for the first time, you don't have lab work forever, your first lab panel, keep it basic. Go in if you feel very bad or very good or whatever it is, and correlate that with your numbers. So over time, you can add more to this panel. You can then test for free testosterone. You can then test for the prolactins. You can then test for the androstenedione, all the different andro metabolites. You can then get your Dutch panel. You can then go through and check for every single extra marker once you have a better understanding. Because if you went in feeling amazing and you got all this lab work versus going in and you felt terrible, got all this lab work, and they both came back the same, even though on paper, reference ranges, and you felt terrible, does it really matter? So to me, baseline, get the basics, then you can kind of proceed forward. So we're going to stop it on the sex hormones, but that is a very big one. If you have low testosterone, if you have low overall sex hormone and androgenic action as a female, there's going to always be problems with not being able to be your best. Whether it be a neurological problem, whether it be a myological problem, there's so many things that can drive. Check your sex hormones. Now we're going to our overall glucose metabolism. So are you someone who is metabolically flexible? We want to be able to utilize glucose and ketones and all these fun things properly. Not only for our body, but for our brain. If we're utilizing nutrients properly, we're gonna have less inflammation, less oxidation, and we can fuel our processes better, AKA the energy we're talking about here. So HbA1c is the average, supposed to be over 3 months. As you are Gen Pop and slowly shift over to that more athletic spectrum, and then you shift over to that more HRT, androgen-using spectrum, the further you go down that spectrum from that Gen Pop to that athlete, to HRT. We have HbA1c being basically a 3-month average that then slowly starts to skew all the way to a 3-week average of what's going on glucose-wise. Fasted glucose levels don't really matter because you could stub your toe before you go in there or have an allergy or have eaten a big meal the night beforehand. It'll skew those numbers. So there's nothing wrong with glucose numbers, with checking your fasted glucose numbers at home, but it's only a snapshot in time. So that's important. There's a time to have a glucose monitor in place. The continuous ones are absolutely awesome to see how you're actually metabolically flexible throughout the day. But overall rule of thumb, if you're checking HbA1c, you're going to be checking to see what's happening. As you're going further down the spectrum, it's the average of a couple weeks versus a couple months. C-peptide, that's whenever we have the pancreas that's packaging those vesicles, right? Releasing it from the pancreas and having the insulins and all that other fun stuff, the amylins of the world. This is also seeing how endogenous insulin and glucose metabolism production is being handled. So C-peptide is another good one to have in there. Cystatin C is a cool one because it's looking at your EGFR independent of inflammation. So if you are doing everything that you're probably doing, if you're watching this video trying to be limitless, trying to have the most amount of energy, you're more than likely training. You're more than likely stressing yourself out from work or family or something like that. As we drive up inflammation, EGFR with creatinine, EGFR is going to go down. So if you abolish that inflammation and just look at the actual filtration of what the kidneys are doing, that's where cystatin C is going to be. hsCRP is going to be essentially the more specific form of overall inflammatory factors, bleeding over into the cardiac world, but also systemic globally, neurologically as well. So hsCRP, we would ideally want below 0.5, but as an athlete, generally below 1.0, you're pretty good. If you are battling a chronic disease, the long C word, for example, that's going to be jacked up 10 plus. If you have any kind of, really any kind of virus, really bad pathogen that's causing you a lot of daily problems, could be anything. There could be an actual renal strain. There could be a hepatic strain. If there's dysfunction, that number is most likely going to go up. So it's a good marker to measure over time, just to see where you're at. So we have our overall lab work. Okay. There's a lot of other things we get into here. But we're going to go ahead and stop it for there. We're going to move on from lab work. So at this point, we've talked about some of the basics. We've talked about some of our lab work. Now we're going to go ahead and we're actually going to look at our sleep. Sleep is extremely important, as obviously everyone knows, but generally it's a little bit, even with everything going on in today's society, with how much everyone knows about sleep, I still don't think it is given enough credit, because in this world of trying to have limitless energy, we are all trying to burn the candle at both ends and still trying to essentially survive and thrive. Whenever we sleep properly, our brain bathes itself in blood and cerebrospinal fluid. It's that lymphatic system. So from a sleep-based aspect, we are mainly looking at that overall neural recovery. So lymphatic system-wise is clearing all those plaques. It's going ahead, it's restoring neurological insulin sensitivity. It's going ahead and allowing your brain to literally recover. So the next day you can actually do things. That then affects, so everything upstream then affects downstream. So your cardiac, renal, and hepatic health gets affected by how well you sleep at night. How you utilize nutrients full body globally in myological, so in muscle tissue, is affected by how you sleep at night. All these things are affected by how you sleep at night, resetting your circadian clocks, changing and actually modulating that sympathetic parasympathetic system. A lot of the people that are over in the sleep-deprived world, especially the narcoleptics and things like that, they are almost always sympathetic. They have high resting heart rates. They have high blood pressures because they're never getting parasympathetic. They're never actually recovering. So in the sleep-based world, we mainly want it for neural recovery. So what are we looking at with sleep? So we talked about one of the things, right? We talked about getting outside at night. So we are looking at moon exposure. Moon exposure in any variety. Again, look at your day, look at what time you have. If we can go outside and get that photonic exchange of having the wavelengths from the moon on us, in our eyes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, it does not matter as long as you're getting outside. More is better to a degree, but if we're getting that, it's starting to drive and say, hey, neurochemical-wise, start firing off those melatonin cascades. Start driving those somatropic cascades where we have this cool, it's actually a really cool flow where we have these 22 kilodalton varieties of growth hormones. So these 22 kilodalton varieties of growth hormones then bleeding over into these 20 kilodalton variety of growth hormones, then going downstream to these 17.5s to 5s, to all these other kilodalton varieties, to then going into the actual hetero, homo, and oligodimers. So these are all going to be actual different dimers and forms of growth hormone. So whenever we are talking about endogenous growth hormone stimulation or exogenous application is straight 22 kDa. And there's some varieties out there where you can get the ratios corrected with the 20 as well. But if we're just doing our own endogenous release, that's when we're seeing all of this from our 22s to the 20s to the 17.5s to the 5s. There's so many different kilodalton varieties. And then the heterodimers, the homodimers, the oligomers. That's actually not a dimer. Either way, tons of cool things that then do what? What does this do? Potentiates that lymphatic system to allow you to sleep better, to drive neurogenesis, to recover your brain. If we're not recovering our brain, the rest of the body truly starts to shut down. So everyone, depending on what, I'm trying to say this right, depending on what your specialty is, if you are a sleep specialist, you're gonna say sleep is the most important thing because of this. If you are a water specialist, you're gonna say, well, every cell is dependent upon these water-based interactions and communication-based systems, so that's the most important thing. If you are a sunlight guy, you're gonna say getting outside is the most important thing because it potentiates your nocturnal interactions of sleep at night. Even though it's in the morning, you're setting up those circadian cascades, then potentiate later on. They're all right. To me, it's not that one is more important than the other. They're all very, very important. So, okay, we have our neurorecovery, we have our moon exposure. We want to get into our basic routines, and the routines can literally be, whatever it's going to be for you, but it needs to be routine. If you have kids, they need to be on your schedule. You cannot be on their schedule. If you have kids or dogs, you know exactly what I mean. That sounds maybe negative, but it's not meant to be negative at all. In reality, what ends up happening is if you have kids or dogs, they'll take advantage of you. They might want to stay up till 11 or midnight or whatever, but you know they got to be in bed by 8, 9, whatever. So in this world of dogs and children and anyone around you, even work, people that are single, their phone's blowing up from work saying, hey, this needs done tomorrow. Hey, that needs done tomorrow. At a certain point, routine-wise, shut your phone off. Go on airplane mode, throw it in the other room, like whatever you got to do. You're not working anymore at a certain time. And kids and everyone has to be in bed at a certain time. That time specific, 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 12 p.m., 1 p.m., whatever, it does not matter. I just said 1 p.m., 1 a.m., whatever number we're talking about. The number doesn't matter as much as long as it's in nighttime. If you look at those nighttime, those shift workers, they have so much plaque accumulation. They have so much neurological atrophy. It's really a terrible place to be at if you have to work that night shift because it's throwing you off. So to me, sleep-wise, it's not so much you have to be in bed by 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. or 11 p.m. It's more so be in bed at nighttime and then wake up in the morning time in some degree or fashion that fits best with your lifestyle. Because remember, everyone also is either a night owl or they are that early morning person. It completely depends. Like I've always been an early riser. When I was in grade school, I'd get up, I'd do all my chores. I remember at that time I was mopping the floors, do my chores for the day, make some money for my parents chores-wise, go downstairs, exercise, come up, have breakfast, go to school. I've always just been an early riser. Other people have always been those night owls. Don't try and fight your circadian biology, go with it. At the same time though, you still have to have life demands met and schedules met. So you can't just kind of go, oh, free for all, doesn't really matter. I'll wake up whenever I want to, no alarms. Certain people can do that, and that's cool. A lot of people can't, though. So go with your biology, but have rough parameters that you have to stick with. So we have our routines. We are brushing our teeth before bed, I hope. We're taking some nocturnal supplements. We are making sure that from a light exposure aspect, we're not having a ton of light on us. So you can have the blackouts for your windows. You can have, like I have the actual sleep mask because when you have kids, you have baby monitors. And you're not gonna turn those off because you gotta have them on so you can hear your kids if anything's wrong. But if you have the sleep masks, blocks that out. So there's just no kind of traversion of light. We don't want that. We want pure darkness. And actually, pure darkness is a different spectrum of light. Cool, different conversation. We'll get to that later on. But from a sleep aspect, we want our moon exposure. We want all of our different routines. And then depending on who you are, towards the end of the day, you might want to block some blue light. Like we talked about beforehand, blue light is not bad. It's overexposure of blue light. The problem is everyone's getting overexposed to blue light in today's society. So maybe semantics there. But this is where you can bring in the blue light blocking glasses and lenses. I personally have the ones from Dave Asprey, the True Dark ones, which work better than anyone's on the market, but I got a big old head. My wife has a big head, and all my kids have big heads. So they kind of compress right here. I'm not sure if you see the lines. Yeah, I was wearing it earlier. Way too tight for me, so I have to buy new ones. But in terms of which ones block out the most amount of blue light, I think it's literally like 99.9% or 100%. It's literally an extremely high number compared to the other ones on the market. But if you got a big head, I'd get a different one. I'm still looking for a different one. But towards the latter half of the day, maybe you do bring in some different things to make sure you're not having that overexposure of blue light. If you are someone who is going to be on your phone when you're laying down in bed, you also have the scrolling through social media, which drives up all these dopaminergic cascades, which are being released at the wrong time, which also screws up a lot of ligand neurochemical activity. But at least if you're blocking blue light, that's one less thing you have to worry about. Ideally, though, if you're going to be in bed doing something, make it constructive. If you're on your phone, read a book or read something conducive. Don't scroll through social media to where you might see one of your best friends posting up something negative, or you might see some bad news that happened where, I don't know, a dog killed an owl, I'm not sure, whatever. Make sure it's something that's actually conducive to you getting into a parasympathetic environment. Go read some happy stories, watch some pictures of dogs. That's an okay use of social media at night. Scroll through those dog pages. My wife does that, calms her down, chills her out, she gets super excited. And that's the follow-up then, looking at getting very extremely parasympathetic. So in that parasympathetic nervous system, this is whenever we are looking at bringing down our ventilation, bringing down our resting heart rate, bringing down the overall neurological firing. At night, we don't want to be firing anymore. Generally, what I start teaching people is you can actually go into the auricular branches of your ear and start massaging them. It kind of looks like you're picking your ear, but if you actually massage those auricular branches, that drives vagal tone, and that'll modulate the parasympathetic system extremely well. So if you have children and they're freaking out, or a spouse who's getting very negative or sad or super sympathetic, go behind them, tell them what you're doing, obviously, don't be a freak about it, but slowly massage those auricular branches, slowly start driving that vagal tone and change. That can be one of the basic little therapies you can start introducing to then start getting more parasympathetic activity. There's supplementation too, we'll get to that in a second. But overall, if we're doing this for sleep, I feel like we're starting to move things in the right direction. There's a lot of other things, there's other devices out there we can also have, and we're gonna talk about this for sure. We are looking at the actual, there are grounding sheets, blankets, everything like that in the grounding world. And we should have touched on this earlier with the habits, but whatever. All we're looking at here is donating electrons. So whenever you eat fruit, antioxidant literally means it's donating an electron to balance out those unpaired electrons to make sure that you are fighting oxidation. So you can do that by standing outside, you can do that by eating fruit, or you can do that by having grounding sheets and grounding products. Antiagingbed.com, they have sheets for your bed, they have pillowcases, they have dog collars, they have a lot of different things. So you would most likely want to bring that in if you're trying to get very parasympathetic at night and drive some extra electron donation. They have the little sheets, basically you can put on the ground as well whenever you're working. I have those throughout the day. Awesome products. There's tons of one out there. There's also different parasympathetic stimulators on the electrical side of things. Certain people can also have the sleep mask on and do red light therapy to make the temperature changes neurochemically to then actually push you into a more parasympathetic deep sleep state. So we have our grounding sheets, our red light therapies. We have a ton of different things that we could potentially be doing. Now, I think we're going to talk about basic mantras and mindset. And then we're going to look at, I think, something along the lines of like our scheduling. I think that'd probably be a good place. We'll do it over here. So we're going to do mantras, mindset, scheduling. So far you may think that everything else has been the most important thing. I actually think that this is the most important thing. Going back to who I was, whenever I was younger, I had a very big temper. I had no patience. I was not the nicest person. And then you have a wife and kids and they soften you up and you realize, I want to be better for this world. I was not always a good person. I'll just be completely honest about it. And part of changing who I am as a whole and having limitless energy is only because I'm putting the positive vibrations, the positive energy out into the omniverse, out into the universe, out into the world. Whatever you want to call it, if you are a more positive, happy person, then more positive, happy things are going to happen to you. Life still happens. Stressors still happen. That's part of life. We need stress, but it's all dependent upon how you respond to things. So every day I start off with, first thing in the morning, some do morning mantra, right? The first morning mantra, the first thing you do before you can get out of bed is you think everything in life is an opportunity. Say that, smile, take a second, then get out of bed. By simply starting off your day with saying everything in life is an opportunity can make the biggest change. It's so simple, it's so basic, and yet it makes you more positive. It makes you more happy. It sets you up for a positive day. Then from there, there's other things we could start saying. So, and then throughout the day, okay? So we're gonna say, that's going to be the opportunity mantra. Then we're gonna say about midday. Other things that occur is the scheduling mantra. So again, it's not so much these have to be specific mantras. You can make up your own, whatever feels right for you and really hits home. But the one that I use and when I have my clients use, whenever you have that, is everything in life is on my own schedule. What I mean by that is as you are getting older, again, trying to do it all, trying to have limitless energy, wife, kids, business, training, all that kind of fun stuff, everyone always needs you. Like for me, everyone always needs me 24/7. I always have dozens of emails, dozens of texts, dozens of WhatsApp messages. My wife always needs me. My kids, my puppies always needs me. Everyone always needs me. But that's not a negative thing. That's a positive. Like, how cool is it that everyone actually cares about my input and that can have that big of a positive impact on them? That being said, though, you can very easily become a workaholic, start turning negative about it, and then never turn things off. But if you start getting overwhelmed and think, everything in life is on my own schedule, all of a sudden, things don't matter so much. All of a sudden you go, okay, I'll look at priorities. And what are my priorities for today? And does this person need something right now or do they want something right now? Because that's a big difference. Your friend texts you and says, I just got shot, I'm in the hospital, I need help. Versus a friend texts you and says, hey, I'm feeling a little fat today. Should I eat less carbs? Should I eat less fat? What should I do nutrition-wise? Which friend are you going to respond to? The one who got shot. That's more important. The guy who thinks he's fat, he can wait a day, 2 days, whatever arbitrary time frame you need there. Focus on your priorities. And that's the next part of this mindset and scheduling as a whole, is that you need to focus on your actual priorities. So if you have your priorities in place, then you can pivot and schedule. So for me, it's very simple. And literally do this as you're watching this or afterwards. We're looking at our actual priorities. So mine is always going to be family first, work, long-term health, academics, athletics. So for me personally, family will trump out everything else. After that, I care more about helping my friends than helping myself. But these two need to be interchangeable, because if you give too much of yourself, then all of a sudden you're not 100%. And if you're not 100%, you can't give 100% of yourself to everyone else. So these are very much interchangeable. Those are those two priorities. Then after that, it's my academics, then it's my athletic goals. You need to be able to pivot though. So as you're going throughout your day, if kid gets sick at school, doesn't matter what's going on with work, they're the priority. If kids are good, wife's good, work's good, everything's happening, and let's say you have some free time, okay, well, do you want academics or athletics there? You can plug and play those in. So you're having your set list of priorities where no matter what, family is always number one. After that, my health and my clients and friends, they're number two. Then it's everything else that goes on after that. There's also kind of this overarching principle for me for just wanting to be a better person in every single way and always progress. Better is better. More is not better. It's a big thing to understand. So having your overall arching principle of who am I, what's my purpose in life? Finding your purpose in life is so absolutely important, because if you were going to do anything day to day and not know where you're trying to end up, how do you know what steps need to be taken today to get to where you want to be tomorrow, next week, next month, so on and so forth? So this overall mantra, mindset, scheduling can keep going, but if we're having these mantras and make up your own, whatever hits hard and home for you, then you can go ahead and have your priorities that can pivot. Pivot is the big one. You got to make sure you're able to pivot. Then make sure you have your purpose. I have a lot of people that are trying to do it all, have it all, but they don't know their purpose in life. They don't know why they're doing it all. They want to make a lot of money, but why? What does that money mean to you? Me personally, I love making money because it directly improves my family's life. I never cared about money. When I was younger, this was even in high school, everyone asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said happy. I said, I'll figure it out. Never knew what I wanted to be, literally fell into all of this, but I just wanted to be happy. Then you have a wife and kids, and you realize money can really buy safety and can buy peace of mind. So that's cool to have the peace of mind as a parent. If you know your kids are healthy and safe and taken care of, you're good. So that's why making money means anything to me. If I didn't have kids or a wife or puppies, I would not be charging people. Like honestly, I would make just enough and do everything else for free. Obviously, that's not the reality of where things are at now for me, but you get the point. Why? What is your purpose in life? That'll dictate everything else you want to do moving forward. It'll really help set you up in the right position. So we have a lot going on here. Again, we're not trying to do all this at one time. We are trying to become the ultimate weapon, the ultimate superhuman, the ultimate person that can literally do it all, have it all. But as you could tell, if you want to have it all, if you want to be able to do it all, you literally have to do it all. I do all these things literally every single day or every single week. Now, that's not to say that you don't take time off from things, but in terms of the basic habitual changes of walking outside, sun exposure, the grounding, the exercising, the neuroplastic work, the mantras, like it really does add up pretty dramatically, but this has been a building process for me over 5 years. So if you are someone who is watching this or knows me personally and you're trying to get to where I'm at in terms of overall ability to have it all, do it all, understand this is not going to happen in the first week or month. It's going to slowly get better and take time and go on and on and on. It's going to take time though. So take everything with a grain of salt. So I think we're going to wrap up now with overall supplementation, because if we are trying to be superhuman, we cannot do that without having some kind of assistance. So we have a couple different ways we can take this. We're going to do Mr. Sups. All right. Quite a bunch going on here. We're going to try and prioritize some things, okay? So first of all, we're going to do our AM players, and then over here we'll do our PM players. We will not touch on all of them. This list of supplementations can go on and on and on. We're going to ease into it, okay? So a lot of the basic ones I always talk about. There's some really cool ones. I'm a big fan of Tiger Milk, Alpha GPC, acetylcholine, acetylcarnitine, Prodrum Neuro, Celank, Modafinil, Methylene Blue. We have a lot, geez. I'm thinking about everything else I want to talk about. We got a lot on this list. Let's break these down first, okay? So Tiger Milk. To me, that is going to be the NGF mimetic, so the nerve growth factor mimetic, the thing that's going to allow us to create new neurons, create new pathways, and literally be the building block. So I like Tiger Milk for the NGF side of things. As you are going through your day and burning through so much neurological substrate like we're talking about, one of the things you're going to burn through is your acetylcholine. So acetylcholine, straight acetylcholine replacement is going to come in the form of alpha GPC. If you want your neurons to release their own acetylcholine, so you can either take it exogenously or drive the endogenous production, that's where acetylcholine comes in to drive up the actual neuronal release of acetylcholine. We can donate methyl groups to that acetylcholine synthetic process with acetyl L-carnitine. So we're going to say that that's more of your methyl donate or donation. Prodrum Neuro. So this is where then on the PM we will be looking at the prodrum glial. So we're looking at omega-3 and 9, we're looking at gray matter changes versus white matter changes. This drives up the processing speed and remyelination of neurons. So overall ability to process, to recall information, to drive your neurological functioning properly throughout the day comes from the prodrome neuro. So we're gonna say overall processing, because again, looking at gray matter dependent processes. Now we're looking at cell length. This can be a really cool. So cell length, modafinil, methylene blue, go through your practitioner, get this via prescription if you are a candidate for it, and then we can go ahead and implement these things. Cell length is a very cool thing that can drive up BDNF cascade, so brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is going to allow us to drive neurogenesis, drive neuroplasticity, and it's really going to start pushing our overall ability to focus and be an anxiolytic agent to the next level. So again, we're not taking all these things at one time, or maybe you are, but you are slowly adding in one thing that you need over time based on what you're actually looking for. Modafinil comes in as modulating all those orexigenic neuropeptides, modulating literally every different dopaminergic, serotonergic, GABAergic. It's modulating neurochemistry in a way that drives arousal, alertness, and focus. Not everyone responds well to it, but modafinil is a very big player for overall focus, arousal, and honestly, epigenetic changes to neurochemistry over time. I've talked before about how you can titrate it up and down and actually start slowly elevating your baseline so that you're making real epigenetic long-term changes. We'll talk about that in another video. Methylene blue is the thing that's going to drive up cerebral metabolic rate. Higher than probably anything else. It also acts as the antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal. It modulates dopaminergic transmission. It does a cool, tremendous amount of things, but I see that mainly as that primary cascade being more of that cerebral metabolic rate. Then from there, and again, we can keep going on and on here, but we're gonna look at our exogenous ketones now, right? So exogenous ketone wise, we have a KE4 variety, we have those 1,3-butadiol varieties, we have the racemic mixtures of the left and right-handed beta hydroxybutyrate varieties. In the exogenous ketone world, a lot of supplements out there, and everyone is always trying to compare and contrast and say mine's better, mine's worse, this salt is too much of a load on your liver, this ester metabolizes too quickly and gives you more of a drunken-based feel. In reality, I have seen such a massive amount of application with exogenous ketones over the years that I think it's more based on the person's metabolism and how they actually cleave and metabolize these ketones as a whole. So when I say metabolism, I don't mean what they're doing nutrient partitioning wise, but their biology as a whole. Are they hyperandrogenic, hypoandrogenic? Are they hypermuscular, hypomuscular? Are they an endurance athlete? Are they a strength athlete? Are they gen pop? Are they dysfunctional? Do they have cardiac failure or renal failure? It goes around so many different, I mean, they have seizures, like the list goes on and on. They all metabolize these exogenous ketones differently. So depending on who you are, how your response is, you can go through, because like the left-handed, right-handed mixtures of beta-hydroxybutyrate can do some cool things acutely and long-term genomically, anti-inflammatory, overall performance enhancement. But we can also see the 1,3-butadiols. We can also see the KE4 varieties and everything with ketone A, ketone IQ. There are so many benefits to all these exogenous ketones. At this point in time, when I'm recording this video, I honestly don't think one is better than another. I think it's more so person dependent. So what I've slowly been having people do is we'll first introduce a KE4 variety as the primary product, right? We will see how you respond to that over time. Because if you're going to have an intracellular signal, remember all these exogenous ketones will drive those intracellular communications to release our own endogenous cascades of peptides. It's going to modulate mitochondrial health, mitochondrial proliferation. It's going to do so many cool things, right? We start off with, and it doesn't have to be in this order, this is just the variety I like to do. We'll do the KE4 variety for a prolonged period of time, modulate, see the responses. Then we'll go ahead and we'll do the 1,3-butadiol, so the ketone IQ. We'll see how they actually respond to that, and then we'll go ahead and we'll do the actual left and right-handed mixtures of beta-hydroxybutyrate. Then we might even go to an MCT variety with some other kind of glymphatic products in there as well to get some ketone and some extra cerebral blood flow. A lot of different things, but I personally have seen way too many responses of dysfunctional, of athletic, and of gen pop that I've seen every single ketone product work. So I'm slowly trying things out over time with people because it's only based on your biology, and that also changes over time. If you start taking KE4, for example, whenever you're sick and dysfunctional and all of a sudden you get healthy, might get to a point where that drops your glucose levels too much. And then you might have to lower the dose or switch the product. Tons of different variety there. There's a whole conversation and another seminar, obviously, that I'll make on exogenous ketones. But supplementation-wise, that might be where we want to start. You're also maybe potentially looking at your DHEAs of the world to modulate all the different neurosteroid cascades. So if you are in the HRT community, you're going to want to balance those out to make sure that the GABAergic, glutamatergic, and the NMDA receptor things are balanced out. There's other things in there as well. We can have our myconized pregnenolone in there. So that pregnenolone dosed sub 10 milligrams is going to actually drive up sigma-1 receptor cascades. You can drive up sigma-1 receptor transmission and cascades through a couple different bits of pharmacology, but in terms of over-the-counter supplements, pregnenolone is one of the only ones that can do that, but it has to be sub 10 milligrams. If it's above 10 milligrams, it spills over into more of the sex hormone cascade. So it goes from a neurological player over to more of like an endocrine hormonal-based player. So we have all those, and again, what we are doing here is looking at what we need. If we don't know where to start off with tiger's milk. Basic NGF donation, build new neurons, basically. After that, you start getting tired throughout the day. You need more acetylcholine. Okay, we bring in one of these 3 acetylcholine players. As you're improving, getting better, you realize, oh, I'm probably plasmalogen deficient. You can get a blood test. Almost everyone needs them. We're looking at the Progen Neuro. And you can go down and then see your response because there's also the other kinds of stimulants out there that have their place and purpose depending on your response. So we're going to stop there. Again, that could literally continue for about 45 more things. We're going to go to the PM. So we talked about the Progen Neuro. Now we're going to talk about the Prodrum Glial. That's the one that's going to drive up the overall repair-based process. So the repair-based process being more white matter dominant, more omega-9s, driving up massive remyelination. This is what you can help take before bed to improve how the lymphatic system works and to improve how you're actually recovering overnight. It's a really novel product. They have some awesome players over there that a lot of people don't really give a lot of credit for or even know about. Now at this point, we're in the PM, right? We are looking for things that are going to drive up a lot of parasympathetic activity and kind of match our circadian environment as a whole, right? Because we're trying to get the most amount of repair possible so that we can actually wake up the next day and feel ready to go. So our basic vitamins, Ds and Ks. So there's a lot of debate about taking vitamin D morning and night. I don't think there's really a clear-cut answer. I look more at brainstem, different regions of the brain and where vitamin D receptors are at, and also look at how during the day we're getting our vitamin D from the sun. So we would kind of want to take it whenever we're not getting vitamin D expression. Also, the sleep centers are involved with vitamin D regulation and activity. I kind of see it as there. And then the K complements the D extremely well. Also has that back-ended effect of improving overall vascularization. So overall, better blood flow hemodynamics, which means you can get more stuff to your brain, more stuff to your body. Everything moves around better. It improves the nutrient partition that we talked about beforehand. So vitamin D and K, we're going to say, honestly, overall repair in our basic circadian player. Now, in the PM, we're trying to chill. We're trying to relax. We're trying to have a high amount of parasympathetic activity. This is where you can also bring in other players, like our actual kavas. We can look at our ashwagandhas, literally anything to go ahead and drive up that parasympathetic nervous system. If we're driving that up, modulating our auricular branches, meditating, deep breathing, whatever you need to really chill out, vibe out, that is going to be a massive player right here. Again, depending on how you metabolize kavalactones, depending on how you metabolize the actual ashwagandha, there's multiple different varieties you're going to want to see and then switch based on your better response. So we have these basic players. We then want to make sure we're transporting free fatty acids into neural tissue. And this is where baby aspirin comes in to literally increase fat transport into our neurological tissue. So we're getting more neuronal healing again, so we can wake up the next day, do it all again, be better, faster, stronger, blah, 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 limitless energy. So baby aspirin, 81 milligrams, or if you're in a couple different parts of the world, it might be 70 milligrams or 90 milligrams or 100, all basically the same, low dose baby aspirin. Then, let's say we have all these in play, and maybe we're looking at driving some basic other recovery factors, right? One of the things we can have in here is kind of bring like a stem cell based player. So I'm a very big fan of actual stem regen, particularly the release product. They have a couple different products out there. I think I'm the biggest fan of the release product because what we can actually see is if you have damage at night neurologically, then stem cells are going to go wherever there's actual damage. If you are a weight trainer, if you are an athlete of any variety and you have sore quads, there's a lot of myotrauma that's gone on there. We're going to release more stem cells. So this is the CXCR4, STF1 cascade dissociation, pushing more stem cells into the bloodstream. Once they're there, they have a product for a signal and they have a couple other products as well, but we don't necessarily need that for people in this variety who are doing this every single day. It might help you, but if you already have the trauma there, the release product, it's going to go there. The body's going to push it into the right area. If you're doing all these other things as well, you don't need to reduce the signaling vibrational changes that might occur, so you probably don't need the other products as well. All the products are amazing. I love them, but most people can get away with the stem regen product, just the release product, 2 to 4 caps before bed. They have the Phanazonion, Fossequia, a couple other ingredients in there. Actually, a lot of ingredients in there. Just the basic herbs and things that have been around. Algae, there's aloe vera, the Madagascar aloe vera, tons of things that will drive up our own endogenous release of stem cells. I think that's probably one of the better products out there that most people actually don't look about, don't care about, and never talk about. So if we have all of those, then we're going to go ahead, and sorry for walking out of the screen here. We're going to call it there. We can add more. There could be the time and need for, actually, no, I'm not going to stop it there. Of course, I got more to talk about. If you are over in the enhanced-based community or you're a natural athlete, there needs to be some kind of growth hormone-based stimulation. So growth hormone stimulation at night nocturnally in the endogenous world could come from something like a basic niacin. If you're over in the enhanced community, it could be direct exogenous growth hormone supplementation from your actual medical provider. It could be growth hormone based peptides from your medical provider. The cool thing about these is what they're also doing on the overall repair side of things is modulating LSK and ETP. So LSK is the thing. So LSK and ETP. LSK is going to be more of the thymic seed cell, and this is going to be that early progenitor cell that then go ahead and increase the repair of the actual thymus gland itself. That's massively important because the thymus gland, in the middle of our chest, starts to slowly calcify and atrophy as we get older. We then release less endogenous peptides. We then recover less. So if our thymic gland is atrophying, guess what happens? Neural tissue recovers less efficiently. Myological tissue, connective tissue, all soft tissue recovers less efficiently. As you can tell, the list truly can go on and on. But if you are slowly rewatching this video, taking notes, and slowly trying to do all of these things over time, you will be able to have limitless energy. There is so much potential for everyone out there. And I know for a fact, if I can do it, my only genetic skill set, the only thing I had genetically that was always strong was my willpower. Other than that, I was never genetically gifted in anything. So I know if I can do this, then I know that anyone out there can go ahead and they can have limitless energy. There are 1,000 more supplements. There are tons of more things. We're going to talk about this. This might be part 1 of how to have limitless energy seminar. For sure, though, I think we covered a lot of the basics. We're going to end it here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to keep these seminars coming. Check out thepepcoach.com. See you guys next time.